As I said earlier, Alan Shimel, editor-in-chief of DevOps.com, and I think we have a fantastic webinar for you all today. I was thrilled that we were able to assemble this all-star cast for us to talk. We have three people, they happen to be women, who each in their own right have crafted a career that most of us would be envious of. But beyond the career, they have all exhibited tremendous leadership, thought leadership, organizational leadership in the DevOps space, going beyond IBM into the community and market at large to really make their mark and help set the tone for the DevOps transformation that we see happening in so many organizations today. Let me introduce you briefly to them. First is Debbie Edwards. Debbie's a vice president of IBM, and she handles IBM DevOps and continuous engineering development and offering management. She'll tell you a little more about what she does in a moment. Secondly is another friend of mine who has actually appeared on our webinars before and DevOps chats, Rosalind Radcliffe. Rosalind is, of course, the author of Mainframe to Mobile, DevOps for Dummies, as well as being an IBM Distinguished Engineer, Chief Architect for CLM and DevOps, and of course Rosalind works a lot with the Enterprise System Management Group, System Zs, and so forth. And last but certainly not least is another friend of mine who's appeared on our DevOps chat, is Rachel Reinitz. Rachel is the CTO and kind of driving force behind the IBM Bluemix Garage and Bluemix Garage method. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alan.
Okay. So I'd like to kick things off today by allowing Debbie to start it for us. And we're going to hand this over to Debbie.
Okay. Thank you so much, Alan. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak with the community. So first of all, let me introduce myself and tell you a little about my responsibilities at IBM. I am, as you indicated, a VP of development, meaning that I have a large global development organization containing architects, developers, testers, as well as deployment engineers. And in my latest role, I also have our business organization, our offering management, all working together to deliver IBM's tools that our clients use to adopt DevOps practices as well as other IBMers use. So as a part of my role over the last 15 years in IBM management roles, I've always been very passionate about transformation, about helping all different types of development organizations that I've been a part of, whether it was the WebSphere Application Server Organization or the Kix Transaction Server Organization, very passionate about the adoption of new development practices, whether it be Agile development or DevOps or whatever was sort of the thing that was going to drive the team to the next level of productivity and effectiveness with our clients. And so it's this passion that I really bring to, to this topic of DevOps, and I'm fortunate enough that given my role, I'm also able to work with many clients in the industry that are doing that as well. So so what I wanted to do today was to share a little bit with you guys about our story. So they're on slide 3, which is where you are, Alan. That's perfect.
Great.
So based on our experience that we've had inside of IBM and practices that we've followed with clients, we put together this sort of prescription for DevOps adoption, which talks about sort of the process and the approaches that we recommend and that we've done inside of IBM and my organization as well to drive this sort of transformation. We always discuss the fact that as you think about these sort of transformations, you have to think about them in 3 dimensions. You have to think about the cultural changes and the actions needed to take to influence and drive change in the culture area. You have to think about process changes that you need to make in terms of how the team works and the ability that they have to have control over those process changes. And then finally, you also need to think about the tools and technologies that really enable the culture and process changes. Really what I say, make doing the right thing easy. So you always have to think about the approach that you take incorporating those 3 dimensions. The first place that we always recommend that you start, and for us was particularly important, is establishing the business objectives of the transformation. For us in my organization, we used to deliver our products once per year, and now our business goal was to deliver more rapidly and move to delivering once per quarter. And then obviously we continue to move that goal forward, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. The first step in sort of understanding the next way forward is to assess where you are as a team. And inside of IBM and in my team, we used a questionnaire, which now has sort of become a self-assessment tool that is available to clients, and the link is there at the bottom of the slides, which allows you to sort of look across the entire life cycle, from how you make business decisions to how you do development to how you do your builds and your deployments to how you really manage and operate the entire environment. And as going through this question as a collective team, you learn a lot about and identify pain points that you have and sources that impede the progress that you need to make. And then simply we set metrics in place, and then we get started and use retrospectives and this culture of continuous improvement to really keep us going and keep the momentum and focus on this. Because as many of us know that have experience in this area, there is no quick fix here. This is an effort that you focus on an ongoing basis and continue to get better and better as you progress. So now let's flip to the next slide, and I'll share with you guys some of the metrics that we created and used to help us manage our progress throughout our journey. As you can see here, this is a journey that has happened over a number of years. And what we did in our particular initiative is we focused on multiple different parts of our process. So the top of the slide talks about where we were from a business perspective. Literally once per year we'd sit down and do a whole big fiasco around trying to make business decisions, and that didn't work in a much shorter delivery cycle. So we had to spend a lot of time getting in sync, changing our business processes, or the way we make decisions, as well as just how we interlocked between our business teams, our clients, and our development organization. And now we have ongoing interlocks and are prepared to pivot at the end of each one of our milestones to move to higher priority items if something in the market has changed. And that has proven to be very powerful for us, and there's numbers of examples where we've shifted our investment profiles based off of market dynamics and input on an ongoing basis. The middle of the chart really focuses a lot on what we did to completely refactor and examine our development, test, and deployment process from beginning to end. We constantly went through and looked at what was the next impediment and the next blocker from being able to move more rapidly at higher quality, and we systematically removed those out of the way of the team. We prioritized those investments along with our other development investments, which is also very important. And now we have a fully automated pipeline that's completely instrumented, so the team knows where it is at all moments. So through this whole process and through the focus on continuous improvement that we had, we were able to achieve our objective of delivering every 3 months. Now we have moved to the point where we deliver to our cloud-based solution monthly. And the other cool thing that we were able to do is really shift our investment profile from doing more keep the lights on activities to focusing on innovation, which allowed us to invest in cool new capabilities that we delivered to market. And we did all that while we drove success with our clients and grew our business, which was also very important to us. So the final slide that I have is I wanted to share with you guys just a few topics that, thank you, Alan, on the next slide, that one of my key clients, Nationwide Insurance, and I presented together at Interconnect. And he is basically a colleague of mine, one of their VPs of development, talking about some of the key areas that we believe are important for success in achieving this level of improvement and efficiency. So the first one I wanted to just mention is automation. I spoke briefly about how we have an automated pipeline. I would say one of the things I think is most important is really thinking about and delivering on automation in all elements of the process, everything from test, but also to your deployment, to your builds, everything that you can do to automate as much as possible, and again, building that into your culture. The other one is visibility and metrics, making sure that the teams are working in an environment which is fully instrumented, and the team has visibility to how they are doing on a regular basis. That is how you empower the teams to improve and to give them control over their destiny. And then finally, what I think is one of the most important things in the organizations that I've been responsible for is creating this culture of continuous improvement, helping the teams understand that it's okay to fail, but we have to learn from those failures and continue to focus on improving. So, so hopefully that was helpful to give you a little sense of the types of things that we've been up to in my organization.
Fantastic, Debbie, that was, and we've actually already got a few questions directly to you, and we're going to save them to come back, but there's some good ones. There's some good ones there. Okay, up next is our next All-Star leader. And I'm trying to hit the next button. Here we go. Okay, Rosalind Radcliffe. Rosalind, it's all you.
Thank you, Alan. So as said, I'm Rosalind Radcliffe, and I'm a distinguished engineer responsible for CLM and DevOps from our enterprise system standpoint. So I primarily work with our large-scale customers who have Z systems generally in their environment, as well as working internally with our products and capability to ensure we have satisfied the requirements in order to be able to build for a Z environment. I also work with our internal teams, as Demi mentioned, but in this case with our ZOS development teams and all the products that we're building for ZOS to help in our internal transformation. And Alan, if you can move to the next slide.
Yes.
The important thing about DevOps and the transformation, as been discussed, for large-scale enterprises or enterprises that have existing, in many cases, mainframe systems, they need to really look at their transformation from a holistic approach. So they need to look at it from an end-to-end perspective. And it's fun, Debbie mentioned Nationwide, because they are a perfect example of a company that has an existing infrastructure around their system of record that is running on ZOS, and they wanted to transform. And so they are a great example of a complete transformation, end-to-end system of engagement to system of record, allowing them to move forward and transform that cultural environment, to move to the agile transformations, and to move everyone within the organization, not focusing on just the system of engagement, but making sure they included everyone as part of the picture. There are numbers of other customers that are doing this transformation. They take a holistic approach, so they look at it from the whole environment, and then they start somewhere, because you can't do everything at once. So each organization picks the right place to start. Companies like State Street have transformed to modern development practices first, and then they'll move to other transformation pictures. But they're all starting from this whole holistic approach, looking at the entire environment and how they can transform all the pieces. Moving on to the next slide, one of the key pieces of this transformation is to really look at systems from the standpoint of APIs, and my systems of record are really providing APIs that power the environment. These APIs can be provided either internally, or you can transform to providing these APIs as external functions and really transform IT from being a cost center to being a service provider. And this is what clients are looking at doing in order to provide the function that's needed from their existing systems of record, their existing environments that they've spent years to build up, transforming them by simply exposing the function so that it's more easily callable from other parts of the organization or from other organizations. And companies like Walmart are a perfect example of what they've done to truly provide a set of services that take advantage of the back-end systems, and then they can be used by the front-end environments to provide the scalability and reliability that they need. APIs really are the key in this transformation, but how do the companies, or how are the companies succeeding? If we move to the next slide, when we think about the transformation, when we think about transformation, especially when we think about our enterprise customers and even ourselves internally when we look at ZOS development. In many cases, the development organizations have been doing development in the exact same way for a very long time because it works. Realistically, if we think about the mainframe environment, it's reliable, it's stable, it's been there for a long time. And over the years, we've done significant things to try and reduce risk by decreasing the number of deployments. But that's really not how we decrease risk. It's really not satisfying the needs of the business today. So in order to have our existing systems of record work in this new digital economy, in order to allow us to expose the functions that you need to expose to allow you to take advantage or to innovate in the organization, we really need to transform these back-end systems into a more agile, into the DevOps approach to allow them to take advantage of this current digital economy. And in the systems of record in particular, we look at the fact that we need to modernize the tools. So we truly need to move, in many cases, to the current century in development tooling rather than using simple green screens that many people are using today, and really build a development pipeline that can work across platforms so that I can have a single automated pipeline dealing with my systems of engagement as well as my systems of record. And those companies that have transformed, that have brought modern practices, modern tools, and allowed them to take advantage of all this capability, allowed them to do this transformation, they see the best benefit, and they can innovate from the standpoint of their businesses. In this diagram, you see things that you would normally see in any development environment: deploy what's ready and virtualize the rest, or using cloud infrastructure. All of these technologies and capabilities are available whether or not we're building a system of record or a system of engagement. And it really is bringing this whole set together so that the teams can work together and we can deliver the business value is the key transformation.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Rosalind, that was great. Just Rachel, before we start with you, I just wanted to quickly mention, guys, we've got some great questions in the queues. I promise you we're going to do our best to get to them all. If you can just bear with us, and we will get to them, but keep them coming too because they're great. Rachel, are you ready? We'll kick it over to you.
Yes, it's always so good to hear Debbie and Rosalind's perspective because we work with clients from all different directions. I'm going to go ahead and talk on my next slide, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay, so my career has really been very focused on taking, I'm sorry, back one.
It's okay, I got you.
You got it. So my career has been very strongly focused on working with clients as part of IBM's lab services organization. So our task has really been to make clients successful in adopting IBM technologies. And particularly, I've focused on emerging technologies. So I did very early Java, XML, web services projects with clients. And about 3.5 years ago, I became involved with our newest cloud effort, which was around platform as a service, and working with Cloud Foundry. There's a big Cloud Foundry summit going on right now, and how IBM, what we were going to bring to market around that, and working with clients early. And that became IBM Bluemix, which is IBM's platform as a service. And at the same time, I was also doing a lot of work on the API economy. And about 2 years ago, when we really started, I guess 2.5 years ago, when we were really establishing an organization around Bluemix, I was asked to come up with a new way of engaging clients on adoption of Bluemix with a strong focus on innovation, because we believe that that's where a lot of clients were going to focus around the systems of engagement side of things for the adoption of Bluemix, and then drive all of this need to modernize the DevOps around the back-end systems to meet the needs of the business to go fast. And so what we did was we established a very new initiative within IBM, really a startup inside of IBM called the Bluemix Garage. So the Bluemix Garage is a consultancy, and we are housed in startup communities. You can see on the right-hand side kind of where we live. So we're physically in those communities. On the left-hand side is San Francisco. And by being in these communities, we both become really engage with the startup community, ensure that Bluemix is a great platform for startup developers. But we also create a great environment for enterprises to come and work with us and kind of break out of their current ways of doing things to become much more innovative. And we've created a methodology that combines design thinking, where you really focus on the end client and get in their head and focus on the experience, with lean startup, where you want to narrow in on what is a minimal viable product. You know, what is the set of tests and experiments that you want to run to prove hypothesis around your business? You know, is this an application that will engage? And there's a law of numbers, which is you want to get a bunch of innovations out there, a bunch of innovative applications, and see which one is sticky, getting it out there with real clients. And then we use extreme programming with DevOps, so we use that flavor of DevOps in how we do development. And we very much integrate designers and product managers into a team, you know, into a squad that executes a project. And so we've undergone a lot of growth. In 2 years, we've gone from basically being me in a room at Galvanize, which is a startup community in San Francisco, to now having 6 garages, with New York having just opened for business this week, actually. And below you'll see kind of some of the pictures of things that we do with the design thinking, with the empathy map, with designs themselves, with test-driven development, and with our platform. So with that, I think we'll go to the next page.
Okay. Sorry.
So I want to share with you a client example with one of the banks, and it actually touches on things that Dibby and Rosalind both talked about. So this bank has a very successful loyalty points program, and they wanted to extend it. They wanted to have it be an option, like right along with PayPal, as you go to your favorite merchants, you know, online checkout, that now you could pay with points. And they're particularly strong in a particular country. So what their question to us was, you know, how quickly could we do this? Could we prove this out and validate it with the business? And they really wanted to experiment with doing something much more rapidly than what they've done in the past. So they were very interested in exploring the garage method that we have, which is encompassing of DevOps and design thinking. So we started out with that design thinking. We spent really about 10 weeks developing a set of APIs and SDKs. But when I say we were developing the APIs, what we were really doing was creating a sandbox of APIs and configuring API management on Bluemix to then link to the on-premise APIs, just like what Rosalind was talking about. One of the big challenges was that this client didn't have these the APIs in the way that we really wanted them. They didn't have nice REST APIs. They had much more of a custom security configuration because the APIs they had been being used internally. So we also needed to architect a security solution that would really work, but you know, to expose these APIs in a secure way with OAuth, but yet bridge over to their internal identity systems. And so that piece of work we kicked off at the same time as we were developing the sandbox APIs and the SDKs. And this is critical because this is part of the bridging of the multi-speed IT, right? Which is that the on-premise piece of work with exposing these APIs and doing the security was going to take longer than the creation of the SDKs and the APIs. So starting to understand what that was going to require and get that effort moving was really important. And this is where, when we do Agile DevOps, we look at it in the context of the overall project that we're doing and adapt for this multi-speed and these dependencies on the existing systems. So we went through, we did this development, we developed our part of it, for the SDKs and APIs and the security piece of it, and the other team was further delayed because they just aren't as agile for getting the APIs done. And in a way, it turned out to be a good thing, because what happened was we took the solution we had created and we started to test it with target merchants. And it turned out they really weren't ready to integrate to these loyalty points. So we had a significant pivot that was, say, let's refocus these APIs to make the integration into other banking products easier, and that then actually eliminated some of the back-end work that needed to be done. So it's actually very much fulfilled the premise of going out, testing things, pivoting, making changes, excuse me, and in fact saving money in the long run. Let's go to the next slide. We have, we have instantiated what we're doing in the Bluemix Garage into a methodology that is available publicly. And this is really IBM's method for driving cloud adoption. It is very encompassing of DevOps. It goes, I would say, beyond the traditional definition of DevOps to do more on the business side with design thinking. And just as Debbie said, culture is at the center of it. And this is entirely compatible with what Rosalind and Debbie had talked about, in that the practices within the method are also applicable to the holistic approach and to the existing systems. Excuse me. And I will say, at the very center of it is culture, and is bringing a team together across these different disciplines, ideally co-located and working as squads. So with that, and with the last cough, I'll turn it back to you, Alan.
Rachel, thank you, and I do appreciate you being a trooper and fighting through your cold and joining us today. Speaking what furthering what you talked about and what Debbie and Rosalind spoke about with culture and what is important around DevOps, I wanted to pop up a quick poll question for our audience. And this way we get a little interactivity going and see where you guys are. Which of the following is or will be most important to you when adopting DevOps at your organization? And if you could select one of the following, or you can do the all of the above question at the bottom. But if you wouldn't mind, if you can give us a quick vote here. Excuse me, hopefully it doesn't take you too long. I hope I haven't caught Rachel's cold over the internet. But anyway, if we can get your responses, we'll close things off here in about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And Jules, let's see what the answers are. Well, as Debbie, you won the bet. 47%, almost half of our respondents said all of the above. Shifting culture and maintaining those interactions were next, and that was nearly twice as much as any of the other ones. So tools, open source, management, executive support came in last at 9%. You know what? The three of you are leaders, and I'm in Stockholm, Sweden today, where we're putting on a CB Summit, having just finished one in London. Gary Groover was our headline speaker, and he wrote a book called Leading the Transformation. And Gary talks so much about the need for executive top-down support in order for a DevOps transformation to succeed. But yet, it came in last in our poll here today. Wondering if Debbie or Rosalind or Rachel have any thoughts on that.
I think I agree with all of the above.
Yeah, that was an easy one.
Yes, I think that, it's hard to shift the culture without the management and executive support. You can do it to a degree. There's certainly, kind of on-the-ground efforts and teams that, start to reshape themselves. But I do think that you really do need that executive support and management support as well. But
yeah,
I really believe all of the above. Sorry, Toby.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, I agree with you. I think, the interesting thing I see with clients whenever I speak to them is, I see situations where there is executive support, but there's not grassroots buy-in. So, it's sort of like, sort of becomes like a lip service type of thing. And then I see things where you have the grassroots involvement, but yet the executive team isn't really bought in. And I'll be honest, both of those solutions are sort of lose solutions or situations to be in. I think one of the things that, I always encourage my peers at my, at clients when I speak to them is, as a leader of the organization, you have to lead by example. You have to demonstrate that you are willing, you're accepting of the change, you're supportive of the change. You have to invest in the success of the team, but you also have to empower the team to be able to own the process and the cultural transformation and the process and tool transformation that they're making as well. So, I think any one of these without, either, bottoms up or exec support without the other is not going to end up in a very effective place. They have to work together, and there has to be acknowledgement of the importance of each one of those in the success of the transformation.
Excellent. Jules, if you don't mind, if we can return to our slides or take it to the last, perfect, and I'll just go one more slide after that. Ladies, I've prepared, before we jump into audience questions, I have a few areas that I wanted to jump in on. But before I do, I wanted to just thank you for all three of your slides and what you had to say. I think they were very, very informative. Before we go deep diving, bag diving, as a lady named Wendy Lee once taught me, before we go bag diving on technical issues and features, I wanted to take the conversation up a little bit. I'd like to know, there are people listening in here. Some are younger, some are older, some are men, some are women. What advice would you give people who want to break into the DevOps field, into the, in helping organizations with their DevOps transformation and becoming DevOps engineers or DevOps team members? Any pearls of wisdom? Crickets?
This is Rachel. I'm going to give a fairly generic answer, but it's what I always say about leadership and, really progressing your career as a technical leader is actually to focus on soft skills. I think the ability to communicate and to influence people and to work in teams is really what distinguishes leaders. Setting vision, being able to clearly articulate the path forward, and I think that absolutely applies to DevOps, especially when you're talking about transformations, that ability to really communicate, lay forward a plan, to then drive, to drive results and communicate those results, I think is really critical. And of course you need the technical skills, and on the technical side, I think really kind of looking externally and seeing what is the latest and greatest, what are the success stories that are happening, the stories that people are sharing, and then you learning from those and trying things out within your own organization to continually improve. And I think Debbie had mentioned that that's critical, to keep looking and continually be improving.
And
Go ahead.
To add to that, I was going to say, and don't be afraid of failure per se. We all learn from our mistakes, and so helping understand and learn and take the right level of risk and learn from those mistakes and help show the organization that failure per se, or mistakes, that things will go wrong, and it's your ability to adjust to it, to transform, to continue to move forward, more than the mistake that was happened. And in a DevOps transformation in particular, especially large scale, you're going to try something and it's not going to be quite right. And so you're going to keep improving on that process, and that continual improvement and showing the leadership of that continual improvement, continuing to change, continuing to evolve is another key piece of this.
Great.
And Alan, this is Debbie. I'll just add two quick things to that. So one thing I would say is that I don't want people to think they have to be like in the, in the mobile space or the web space or whatever it might be to be able to be a champion for change and for adopting these sort of practices. I mean, I showed you a story where we took a large development organization building, large on-premise software and transformed that over a period of time. And the benefits you can get from doing that are significant. So I just challenge people to make sure that you look at your particular situation and look at what you can do to improve it and make it better, and take that on as a challenge, and recognize that everybody can be a part of driving this sort of change. The other thing I would say as a leader, when you're doing this type of thing, is it's really, really important to listen to the team and then act. Because if you say that you're going to listen and act and you don't, then it really undermines the success of the entire project. And that means investing, that means prioritizing the work that needs to be done to support the transformation along with the other work that the team is doing. All those things are really instrumental to this. And I think, the coolest thing for me is when I see the team really start to own the transformation themselves and start to get excited about the benefits that they're seeing from it. That is probably the coolest thing as a leader, is to see your team, really benefiting from the changes that they themselves now own and are driving. So it's very fulfilling.
Excellent. Just one more question for me, and then we'll jump into all of these audience questions. What attracted each of you to DevOps? Each of you have had successful careers, leadership roles. DevOps comes along, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago at most. What attracted you to dive in here? Rosalind, would you like to go first?
Sure. So it's kind of, in my case, a little interesting in the sense that I spent, 10 plus years doing systems management work, and then had the opportunity to come over and be responsible for the CLM capability development tooling from a Z perspective. And so to drive how we can do Z development and IBMI development from a development side. And so I spent many of my years in the operations world saying it was a development problem. And then I got to move to the development side, and I couldn't say it was an operations problem because of my history. And so when we looked at that, I kind of went, well, let's stop having these separate silos and let's start bringing the teams together. And that's about when DevOps started coming out, and there were start to be discussions about DevOps. And so I kind of latched onto it from that perspective to try and drive from an enterprise perspective this bringing together of ops and dev in a better way, and really providing transparency, visibility, and collaboration. And so it kind of fit.
Excellent. Debbie, Rachel, which one of you would like to chime in?
I'll just comment that my background has been in development, and really adopting, more starting with sort of iterative development and then agile development over the years. And, I've saw the value of how breaking down the barriers and silos across the entire, organization responsible for delivering capabilities, and the value that brings to, not only speed, but also the appropriateness and the value of what's being delivered is significant. And so DevOps became a natural sort of extension of some of the agile work that I had been doing in the team. And I've seen a tremendous amount of even improvement, beyond agile development by adopting DevOps practices and really connecting the entire team end to end. So that's sort of been my passion and the reason I got involved.
Excellent. And Rachel, last but not least.
I think for me, I've always been out working with clients, and my background was more on the development side, and I love doing development, and so I was very early adopter of the Agile movement, and because I love delivering code rapidly. I love test-driven development where you see your code really work. So I was already adopting a lot of what became DevOps. The part that wasn't there yet was, as much the ops side. And then at the same time, I work with clients and I deal with situations where software stops working in operations, and IBM is part of figuring out what went wrong. Is it our product? Is it their code? And you see these gaps, and I would see where there was no way to reproduce the problems, etc. So for me, bringing this closer and closer together and for me it was really the cloud, being part of cloud that's driving to a new model, so it's all kind of comes together, that as you're going to cloud, you're changing your operational model as you're responding to the business needs to really innovate and deliver features much faster, that you're going to DevOps. So to me, it's just so exciting to be able to go from, an idea and something that the business wants to develop all the way through to getting it developed and operating really rapidly with a strong discipline around it, and that you don't, with all the automation and then with a cloud platform, you don't have to spend all this time just trying to get the underlying systems to work. You can focus on delivering the value. So to me, that's how I kind of got, involved into DevOps, and then I'm really excited about how we connect it over to the business side.
Excellent. So guys, we have a lot of questions here from audience, so I'm going to pivot over to that. We'll come back to some of this other stuff in a second. Our first question was actually sent in prior to the webinar by John Milo, and it's a long question. I'm going to try to paraphrase it. And it's basically, the DevOps teams, new company startups have it easier implementing DevOps since they're building environments and implementing between dev and ops sort of in a green field. But it's a much steeper climb for existing companies to change the culture and environments, isn't it? And that's a kind of common question. When I first started DevOps.com, people used to say, oh yeah, that's great for startups, but how's an enterprise who already has all of this legacy stuff going to do it? And Rosalind, what a better person than you to answer this one, because you get this all the time, I'm sure, with the mainframe customers and the Systems E stuff.
Oh, absolutely. This is a absolutely common question, and it really is an interesting question in the sense of, in the Z space, in many ways, we've actually already been doing a lot of things that are considered part of DevOps, in the sense of we already have a single code stream in many ways. We have one way to get at it. We already have an automated build, an automated deployment process. We've already done those kinds of things in the system. We already have standardized environments, not customized. So there are a lot of those pieces that are actually already there. And so we've got a head start in some areas, and then, well, a huge back step when it comes to modern processes and modern tools. And so when I look at large-scale enterprises, I talk about what you need to do is modernize and take those practices that you've brought into the distributed side a long time ago, test-driven development, automated testing in general, all of those kinds of practices, and just bring them across the spectrum from Dev and Ops. The other piece of this is everyone, in a sense, no matter how large or small you are, pretty soon you end up with systems of record. You have some set of system of record environment that you want to keep running, and so everyone has the issue of a set of systems that they have that they want to maintain unless they're really brand new. And so this process of how do I do this more efficiently through automation is a positive move. It's not a throw away and restart. It's just a moving forward and adapting the processes and practices. And a lot of times I get the question, but these new startups, they don't have an ops. They don't really have ops. It's really dev working. And in many cases, they're a new startup who are using a currently existing cloud provider. And so the cloud provider is providing some level of that ops. And so we still have to have people running the systems and keeping the systems up and running. And when you start talking about some of that piece of this, then the more, larger scale companies go, oh, okay, so we really still have this set of things to deal with. We're bringing people together. We're working more closely together. All of these are positive things, learning from both sides of the environment and going through a slow, in some ways, transition. You can't transition overnight. It really is a let's work through these, let's pick the biggest problem, address it first, and then keep moving across the organization.
Great. Guys, we have a lot of questions, so I'm going to move along. The first one is a really very specific question to Debbie in your presentation. Aisha wanted to know how long was the sprint in the particular metric you were talking about when how you improved delivery times. And I don't know, Debbie, if you have that information. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Our sprint, our sprints are 4 weeks. We have experimented with different sprint lengths, and we've got a couple of teams that actually do 2-week sprints. But we found that, given the size of our organization and the amount of validation that we need to do in the environment and making it ready for a customer consume it at the end of each milestone, we needed a 4-week timeline. So that's what's proven to be best for us. And I, my perspective is I encourage clients to experiment with it, and to find the right rhythm for your own individual organization, given your business requirements, as well as as well as really where you are in the adoption of the process. So that's my thought recommendation, and again, ours is 4 weeks.
Got it. Next is, actually, I think, Debbie, it's another question for you. Did you find a point of diminishing returns in making too many changes too quickly? Does the customer have difficulty absorbing rapid changes?
Well, that's why, actually, if you we can spend like a whole day really talking about the transformation that I discussed in about 5 minutes. So there's a lot behind all of this, but you're absolutely right. You can't change too many things at a time. And what we did is, we basically kicked off, some work groups which were led by some of our technical teams, actually, who identified what they felt were the biggest inhibitors that we needed to address so that we could start to move faster. And we started to make small changes. And I mean, we ran the changes that we made through that same exact sprint process. And at the end of that 4-week sprint, we asked ourselves, did we make the improvement that we needed? If not, then we, added the next, work item, at the top of the sprint backlog for the next sprint. So these were things that were sort of some being worked in parallel, and some of them, it took a long time to actually, work through, the real inhibitors to moving faster. So I'll give one example to make it a little bit more tangible. So our build process, as an example, you could see, and the number's not right in front of me, but it took a tremendous amount of time to do a full build process for our product. So we immediately invested in some low-hanging fruit things, in the build. So we added more horsepower, as an example, with more machines, and more resources initially to try to get things to move faster. Then we recognized we needed to refactor how our build was done. We needed to then recognize that we needed to make product changes so that our teams could work more in parallel, and we could do more parallel builds than doing them, straight in the serial approach. So this just reflects, the amount of learning and the way that you go about learning through this, and then constantly looking at what the next level of improvement can be. But I agree,
Excellent.
making a huge disruptive change is difficult, and it's better to bite it off in smaller chunks.
Rachel, you have something to add?
Yes, I think that, as Debbie said, a lot of it depends on the organization and how large the organization is you're trying to change and what you're trying to accomplish. So we see, I find with the customers I'm working with, that there's a real range in how aggressive they want to be and how much they want to do at one time. I work a lot with teams that are being carved out as innovation teams to lead the way on DevOps adoption and lead the way on, working in new ways with clients. And when that's occurring, that there's this desire to change dramatically and to really do things in this very new way. And they work with us to kind of see the very fastest that you can go, really adopting full-on DevOps from the very beginning on new projects. And I do find customers want to do that kind of transition, but just what Debbie's saying is you have to lay out the plan that makes sense for the culture and how fast the organization wants to go. So I think you see both. You see more of an incremental adoption and you see more of dramatic adoption depending upon what the objectives are and the size that of the organization. And, how much urgency.
Excellent point.
Mm-hmm. Actually, the next question is sort of in the same general area, which is how do you balance speed of innovation with environment and product stability, as well as organizational stability, right? Because, sometimes speed can kill. And so, Rosalind, we'll give you a chance right now.
So when we look at especially the transitions when we think about back-end systems, we need to think about how we can move the organization to provide function fast enough. Rachel's comment about the back-end team being too slow it really has nothing usually to do with the tools, with the kind of development you're doing. So it doesn't matter if you're doing COBOL or if you're doing PL1 or if you're doing Java. The problem is the processes and procedures that we've put in place. And so it's transforming those processes and procedures to get all the things out of people's way so that they can innovate rather than focus on the processes and procedures. And I think that kind of transformation helps drive this ability to generate the business value that you need to be able to make the changes. And it's focused on that, allowing the teams the ability to do the work, to be able to focus on the business value and getting that feedback very quickly about whether or not what they're doing is business value to the organization.
Excellent. Let me take, we're not going to have time for all these questions. I apologize. When we're talking about DevOps, one on-call engineer for all of the services or different on-call engineers for each service? That's a pretty specific question. I think it might have been aimed at you, Rosalind. I'm not sure. Or was it Dibby?
So I can
tell you from my experience, the key thing about having an on-call engineer is that they have to know the code and the environment, right? So, I think that, that's the whole idea, is you have the experts close to doing the operational aspect so they can quickly respond, or they can actually understand better about how the capabilities they're delivering work in a real production environment and how the customer uses it. So, I think it depends. I don't think there's one dictated way to do it. I think it depends on the situation, but it has to be an expert. That's my point of view. In my experience, what we've done in our team.
Yeah, what I've seen this is Rachel, with my customers is that there's DevOps, but there still is operations as well. And by that, what I mean is that there's a first level on-call that is going to take some immediate actions to recover whatever the situation is to get the system back online. And at the same time, there's then that second line, which is the true DevOps engineers, and it does tend to be by service, right? Because to what Debbie said is they have to have the expertise on the particular service. And when I first heard this, I was like, well, does that mean we're not really doing DevOps? And the answer is we are, because there still is this very strong operational responsibility for those developers. But we found that it's a reality in terms of the kinds of roles and you know, that it goes against transforming. You know, it's hard to take people and all of a sudden have them be 7 by 24. Now, again, as a second line, like we're going to call you pretty rapidly if we can't get the system back online, absolutely. But in terms of, you know, being sort of the first line of response, there is still an operations team for most of our customers and for many of our own systems.
Rachel, I think you may need to move the mic closer to your mouth.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Much better. But that's okay. I waited until the end of your answer to do it. I should have jumped in. Guys, listen, we have a ton more questions, but unfortunately we're going to need to get you them in writing. And if you all have a chance, we can get the responses in writing, and we will post that along with the recording of today's webinar. Otherwise, we'll be here for another hour, and it's not fair to the people who have logged on. What I do want to do in wrapping up, though, is on the slide on your screen right now gives you more information on today's topics, as well as a bunch of upcoming events where either Dibby or Rosalind or Rachel or myself will be involved in. We're at CD Summit, Does London, Share, IBM Edge, and I have a minute. We have a minute for the three of you. So quickly, Rachel, where are you next?
I'm kind of all over the place. Best way to see where I'm next is to follow me on Twitter.
And your Twitter handle is?
R-Reinitz. R-R-E-I-N-I-T-Z.
Okay. Dibby, how about you?
So I am also on Twitter, but I'm actually more active in a blog that where I share information. Actually, a lot of details of the whole transformation are available at the Garage Method. If you go out there, you can find me as an expert there, and there's some links to blogs that I've written over, you know, the lifetime of this journey on our experiences, and I continue to keep that update coming. I'll also be available at IBM Edge in September.
Fantastic. Rosalind, how about you?
So as everyone said, I'm on Twitter at Rosalind Rad, and also available coming up very soon at the London DevOps Enterprise Summit event, where I'll be speaking about audit test mainframe test automation. We also have Share coming up soon, and at Share we actually have an entire DevOps track, and it's going to be focused on enterprise systems from a DevOps standpoint. We have Walmart as one of our keynote sessions, and we have numbers of other sessions and customers presenting on their experiences for DevOps transformation. So I'll be there all week.
Fantastic. Ladies, I can't thank you enough. It was great that we were able to schedule to get all three of you on one webinar. I'm sure the audience loved it. We are going to get you these questions in writing, and if anyone would like to answer, we'll post them. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to IBM for sponsoring today's webinar. And thank you most of all to our attendees. Over 500 of you registered, and we thank you for that. We thank you for your support. We hope you've got as much out of it as I do. This is Alan Shimel. Until next time, from DevOps.com. We'll see you at another webinar soon. Thanks, and have a great day.